All right, guys. So I saw that Film Theory made a video about Superman. I guess they're gonna try to guess the plot before the movie comes out. So thought this should be fun to give it a little look see. I don't know why I said it like that. That sounds cringe, but alas, can't go back in time now, can we?
I know the plot of the new Superman all from just its first teaser.
Whoa.
And better yet, I know the plot of the sequel they haven't even
Oh my
announced
gosh.
yet. Yeah, really. So if you're excited for the film and just can't wait for it, take a seat and let me tell you exactly how it's gonna roll out. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Film Theory, the show that believes a man can fly, before promptly falling to the ground in the Yamcha death pose. Speaking of, did y'all see the new teaser for the new Superman reboot? This thing was all over my feed, and everyone is excited about it. Look up! Oh my God! Oh, they're doing that boy! And you know what? That also includes me. I love Superman. The Big Blue Boy Scout has always been a favorite hero of mine, so I'm hella excited for this movie. Like, being real, I've actually been planning on doing this theory on Superman since the movie was announced. He had a script all the way back in like December of 2023 before we had like any details about the movie, and that script predicted that crypto was going to be in this movie before like any of that information came out. Needless to say, we got this video made.
Oh my
just about
gosh,
as
he
quickly as physically possible.
knew? He knew that crypto was gonna be in it. Didn't they already announce that? To be fair, even 8 months ago. I don't know.
Us after this trailer drops. Between writing and editing, it always takes us about 2 weeks to get a video made, and of course, this teaser dropped. The second theorist was ramping down for the holidays. Gosh darn you, James Gunn! This better not be the start of a trend where you drop stuff as soon as we go on vacation. Anyway, this movie has a lot of pressure on its shoulders. Not only does DC need a massive win after the disasters that were The Flash and Joker 2, not only does this need to live up to and justify recasting Henry Cavill for the main character, not only will this be the movie that will make or break the new DCU, but along with Marvel's Fantastic Four, it has people wondering if it can revive the genre. Now that people are calling the 2020s the end of the superhero era, will it be able to do that? I don't know. Honestly, I just want it to be a good movie first and foremost. But of course, I wouldn't be a very good theorist if I didn't overthink something about the movie, right? Well, thankfully, despite just being a minute and a half long with basically no dialogue, DC head honcho and Superman director James Gunn still managed to pack this thing full of a ton of detail. Enough that I believe I can predict the entire plot of this thing based solely on what we see here in this teaser and other quotes from Gunn and DC. And if that's
All right, guys, watch out, guys. It might spoil the movie. I remember well, not he, because he's not Matt Pat. Okay, you're not him, buddy. You think just because you can make your own PNG cutouts that you're him? You're not. You'll never be him. No, I'm kidding. I remember Film Theory also, they tried to predict the Batman. I don't remember if it was correct or not, because I don't remember what the prediction was. But yeah, so they like to do this. They like to do a little theorizing.
a superhuman feat? Well, below to this. Not only do I believe I can predict the plot of this Superman movie, but also its inevitable sequel. You heard that right. I'm going to tell you the plots for the next two Superman movies, all based on one teaser. And if I'm right, well, just call my superpower theorizing. Put on your capes, loyal theorists. We're about to go up, up, and away. All right, just so we're on the same page here, the only sources I'm going to be using for this theory are either official ones or publicly available ones. That means the teaser, casting announcements, public set photos, and things from official sources like James Gunn or DC themselves. I will not be looking at any plot leaks or insider information for this at all. As for our methodology, we're going to be looking at the teaser frame by frame and dissect.
That's probably fair, to be honest. Like, dude, there's so many, like, scoopers and whatever out there that it's hard to even take any of it seriously at this point. Like, there's so many of these, like, anonymous scooper accounts, like, you know, Daniel Richtman, or what is that other guy, My Time to Shine Hello, where it's like, at this point, when I hear that it's from one of those guys, it's just like, okay, like, it could be true, it could not be true, but I'm never going to get, like, excited because they announced something, because it's just like, I don't know.
Predicting everything James Gunn has said about this movie, comparing that against the source material that inspired both this version of Superman and this story, and then identifying the themes I believe this story is going to be following. From there, using the rules of storytelling, we should absolutely be able to work out the plot of this film. So, with all that being said, the setup and what we know. Well, just from a surface level, we know this is not an origin story for Superman. This comes straight from James Gunn, who said, quote, Superman's already existing. Lois and Clark already know each other. Lex hates Superman's guts from the beginning, although they don't know each other personally. That makes sense. Everyone knows Superman's origin story at this point, and we don't need to see it again. Additionally, Gunn said that most of the trailer's footage takes place from the beginning of the movie, though, quote, there are a couple moments that are from later. So we'll just need to keep that in mind while we're putting together the plot from this teaser. Okay, that's some broad strokes, but what about something more concrete or specific? Well, we can also tell exactly when this movie takes place. A newspaper from the set is dated Monday, May 19th, and 2025 is a year that has May 19th fall on a Monday. 2025 is the year the movie's coming out, and there's a lot of modern tech in it like cell phones. So, yeah, that checks out. Likewise, this story exists pretty far into the DCU. From both Creature Commandos and the parts of Peacemaker that are still canon, we know that superpowers have been around for a long time in this universe. And in the teaser, we see a team of pretty established superheroes already. Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and the Green Lantern Guy Gardner. Finally, the team.
Yeah, I know most people at this point think that because their costumes are similar, that this team of superheroes are either working for Maxwell Lord, who's in this movie, or Lex Luthor, which is interesting. I think they also might have an L somewhere on their costumes or something like that, so it's probably going to be Maxwell Lord.
Teaser, set photos, and casting announcements have also shown us that characters like Metamorpho, Red Flag Senior from Creature Commandos, the Engineer from The Authority, and a mysterious character with a big U on his chest are all going to appear. That last one is either a villain named Ultraman or Ulysses, not sure which yet. Strangely, we also know that a lot of these superhumans seem to work for billionaires. Both the Engineer and Ultraman/Ulysses are henchmen for Lex Luthor, while Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific all wear matching uniforms with the logos of billionaire Maxwell Lord on them. It's kind of like a pro athlete.
Oh, interesting. Wait, what did you say about Lex Luthor?
One is either a villain named Ultraman or Ulysses, not sure which yet. Strangely, we also know that a lot of these superhumans seem to work for billionaires. Both the Engineer and Ultraman/Ulysses are henchmen for Lex Luthor, while Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl,
Wait, I'm sorry.
Strangely, we also know that a lot of these superhumans seem to work for billionaires. Both the Engineer and Ultraman/Ulysses are henchmen for Lex Luthor, while Guy Gardner.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just trying to Sorry, I probably shouldn't like film the theorists. They talk quickly, so it's not probably not good to put them on 2.5 on two times speed. Okay, do we know that they're henchmen for Lex Luthor? Like, is that a thing that we know, or are we just like assuming? Or are we theorizing? I'm honestly not sure about that.
Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific all wear matching uniforms with the logos of billionaire Maxwell Lord on them. It's kind of like they're pro athletes or something. Now, all of that is fairly surface level, but we can learn a lot more about the themes of the story being told here if we look at what inspired this film. Gunn has said that this version of Superman is, quote, the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way, guided by human kindness in a world that sees kindness as old-fashioned. And when asked by a fan for a list of what inspired his take on the character, Gunn gave them a lot of options. They're all on screen here. I'm not going to list them all out, but big ones that
Interesting.
should stick out for us as film buffs are the Christopher Reeve Superman and Superman the Animated Series.
So you're not such a Boy Scout after all. Never even made it to my first merit badge.
Just classics, we love it. Oh, and also, DC themselves said that these storylines here directly influenced and inspired Gunn while making this story. Now, tonally, all of these...
not related to anything that he's talking about here, but can I just say this? I'm not a massive fan of the DC Studios logo. It's like, I get it, you're trying to go back to the classic comic books or whatever, but I just don't think that this studio looks very good in 2025. I don't know, just not a big fan of it, but does that matter even at all? Even a little bit? No, it doesn't.
Now, tonally, all of these comics and stories really lean into the hopeful part of Superman, the version of the character that will do the right thing no matter what, even at the cost of his own wants, needs, or even his life. A great example of this is All-Star Superman, which is all about Superman doing as much good as he can in the days before he dies. Even as his own life is ending, he wants to set the Earth and humanity up for success, inspiring even his enemies to be better.
If it had mattered to you, Luthor, you could have saved the world years ago.
While I don't expect Superman to die in this movie, I expect a lot of the same ideas and vibe to be in this film. And before we move on, another story that really stuck out to me here was Kingdom Come. This is probably one of the best stories in DC's history, all about...
Okay, so I've never read Kingdom Come, but I think Kingdom Come is about an older Superman who is like troubled. This is just what I've heard from people. I think he's an older Superman, and he comes into conflict with like newer superheroes, like baby superheroes, who are doing things in ways that aren't good, right? Like I don't know if they're being just overly brutal and violent, if they're like, I don't know, they're being bad, like almost renegade superheroes. And this is kind of a story of them being like, sit down, kids. I'm Superman. That's not the way you go about doing things, and I'm going to inspire you to be better. And I think that might make sense if Superman is going to be inspiring the already existing superheroes like Guy Gardner and Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific. Like, I wonder if that's kind of where that inspiration is going to play into it.
An older Superman coming out of retirement into a world full of violent, reckless heroes, bringing hope and morality back to a cynical world. Does that sound familiar? Well, it should, because it's kind of exactly what this movie is trying to do. Regardless of what you thought about them, DC's movies over the last decade under Zack Snyder's leadership were darker. They were more violent and cynical. That's not a value judgment, it's just a fact. And this new
take that, Snyder fans. You've been felted by film theory. You're never going to recover from this.
James Gunn DCU seems like a rebuke of that. It's intentionally doing something completely different and bringing a real brightness and hope back to these characters. I think it's...
You know what's honestly, like, more even than that, I contend that the main problem with Man of Steel specifically is that there is no chemistry between Lois Lane and Clark Kent. And I just think that if you don't have that, then your Superman attempt is just, it's over. Like, that's like the core backbone of what makes Superman great. At least I feel like. It's like the movie just feels empty a little bit. I don't even mind Man of Steel as a movie. Like, I enjoy it for the most part, but it's like when you don't have that core thing of Clark and Lois, it just ultimately makes it feel a little flat. It makes it feel a little just not as like bright and optimistic. I feel like if you don't have that core backbone to your movie.
Say that all of that was on the top of Gunn's mind while crafting this Superman, because even his emblem, the S on his chest, is taken directly from Kingdom Come. This Superman is carrying on the legacy of that story. And speaking of legacy, well, though this movie is now just called Superman, when it was first announced, it had a slightly different title, Superman Legacy. And that is massively important both for this movie and the DCU slate as a whole. See, a lot of the announced DCU projects involve the idea of legacy.
There's one single video that's responsible for
that
leading
was
over
Pornhub.
2,000 Christian men to permanently quitting
Transition, generational change, torch passing, family. I mean, just think about it. Brave and the Bold is all about Batman and his son. Lanterns is about an experienced Green Lantern taking a new recruit.
Bro, Brave and the Bold, I don't know what's going on with that movie. For people that don't know, it was announced, and it was also announced that Andy Muschietti would be directing it, but apparently it's been going through struggles. Like, apparently they don't have their script ready. Andy Muschietti is now saying that, like, it looks like he might be directing another movie before Brave and the Bold. So it's like, it seems like Andy Muschietti might not be on it anymore. There's a lot of weird stuff going with Brave on with Brave and the Bold. Along with that, all the rumors of the Batman and, like, whether that's going to end up being reworked into the DCU. I'm just very curious to see ultimately what ends up happening with the DCU Batman.
Root under his wing. Paradise Lost is a prequel all about Wonder Woman's mothers. Other projects like Teen Titans are about younger heroes coming into their own. Dynamic Duo is about the different generations.
Does Wonder Woman have, like, multiple mothers? Is that... What exactly is going on here? I don't...
all about Wonder Woman's mothers. Other projects
I mean, I'm not opposed to that.
Teen Titans are about younger heroes coming into their own. Dynamic Duo is about the different generations of...
To be fair, I don't think that Dynamic Duo is going to be in the DCU. I'm pretty sure that's an Elseworld story, but maybe it might be. I feel like it wasn't initially going to be that. Or I don't think they said it was going to be in the DCU when they announced it.
Robins, heck, even Creature Commandos is about the successor to the Suicide Squad. Now, Superman has all the power in the world, but if he wants to keep his identity as Clark Kent a secret, he should be using the sponsor for today's theory, Incogni. True story.
Oh
my mom
gosh.
loves bird watching. She has this bird feeder that has a little camera on it and sends me links to pictures of her birds. Well, right after I clicked that link for the first time, all of a sudden I was getting tons and tons of ads for similar bird feeder cameras. Like, that's weird, right? This sort of thing happens because your data is being collected and sold by thousands of companies without your knowledge and consent. And while it's cute when it's about a bird feeder, it's not so much when it's about your full name, email, home address, phone, and social security numbers. But thankfully, you have the right to demand that these companies delete your info. But doing that could take you months or even years to do manually. There's so many better things to be doing with that time, like helping the people of Metropolis or breaking a big story for the Daily Planet. Thankfully, this is where Incogni comes in. See, Incogni will reach out to these companies for you, and they'll do all the heavy lifting, Superman style. So they'll request that these companies get your personal data off the market and deal with any objections from these shady companies looking to make a buck off of you. You've probably heard me talk about Incogni before because they're long-running partners of the channel, and I do use their service. I love checking in to see their progress, and last time I looked in November, they'd completed 330 requests and saved me 246 hours. Just 2 months later, here in January, and now it's all the way up to 389 requests completed and over 291 hours saved. If you want to keep your personal information private, you can get 60% off an annual plan by going to incogni.com/filmtheory.
That is cool, but I've just kind of like accepted that
incogni.com/filmtheory, or just click the link in the description.
That companies and even other countries just have my data.
For sponsoring this episode, and now let's fly back into our Superman prediction. So, okay, how does all of that apply to Superman? Well, other than the themes of being hopeful in a bleak world like we just discussed, I bet that this story involves Clark balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. And there just so happens to be a great Superman villain that can take that internal conflict and turn it into an external one. Brainiac.
Brainiac, what is it? Look, I just want some.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's getting to the villain because I don't think they've announced who the villain of the movie is. Or I think James Gunn said that the main villain was going to be Lex Luthor. But I feel like there has to be like a physical main threat to Superman as well.
Pants. A decent pair of pants.
Yeah, so this is Brainiac, one of the oldest Superman villains and pretty much his nemesis outside of Lex Luthor. He's basically a living computer, an AI from another planet obsessed with collecting every possible scrap of knowledge in the universe. He also happens to be one of the biggest Superman villains that we've never seen in a live-action film, so there's fertile ground there. So why do I think Brainiac is going to be a major player in this story, even though he hasn't been revealed at all or even cast yet? Well, a couple of reasons. First off, there's the giant energy orb floating behind Lois and Clark in the first teaser image and trailer that is the same color scheme as Brainiac, purple and green throughout his many appearances, as well as seeming more like alien tech as opposed to something more human-based like Luthor. And secondly, one of the main storylines that DC stated
that's crazy. You can't use that man's head as a canvas. I feel like this is offensive to bald people. Like what's going on here? You're using my boy's head as a canvas for your After Effects bullshit? Nah, that's offensive.
One of the main storylines that DC stated influenced Gunn while he was writing this film was Superman Brainiac, a story where he was the main villain. Well, this one just seems like a layup.
That's I guess other things could inspire you, but it's crazy to just reveal that that's one of your inspirations. I mean, like, maybe there were other story elements in there aside from Brainiac that would inspire you, but I feel like that's kind of a confirmation. I don't know.
And when you look at Brainiac's whole deal, you can see why this makes a lot of sense for the story. See, in both Superman Brainiac and the story that introduced him back in the 50s, Brainiac had preserved an entire city of Kryptonians and their knowledge, literally shrinking them and putting them inside of a bottle. And in a lot of continuities, like the DC animated universe that we know influenced Gunn here, Brainiac is even just straight up a Kryptonian AI. If this Superman is one that's wrestling with his legacy, his Kryptonian heritage...
He's also a Kryptonian AI in My Adventures with Superman, which is a very good animated series that you should watch.
versus his human upbringing, what better way to make that into something tangible for this story? Here's a villain with the knowledge Clark wants, but he's also a danger for his new home. There's great multi-layered conflict sitting right there, and the drama writes itself, especially if other villains like Luthor can discover it and take advantage of it. Alright, so that's a lot of information. We sort of laid out a lot of pieces for a complicated puzzle, and putting them together will get us to... the plot of Superman. It's May of 2025. Clark Kent has been working at the Daily Planet for a while now with other reporters like Lois Lane, all while moonlighting as Superman. But he's still very much the new kid on the block. Other heroes like Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, and Hawkgirl have been doing this for much longer, and so that they become part of the machine of society. Hero teams are often funded by corporations or billionaires like Maxwell Lord, or used by the government for secret missions as seen in Creature Commandos and the Suicide Squad. We actually see Mr. Terrific in some sort of desert fighting what look like mercenary commandos, probably on one of these privately funded missions. People are familiar with superheroes and these antics, but maybe they don't really trust them because all of these heroes are flawed and cynical. But Superman? He's different. He seems to have more power than these other heroes, but he's nothing like them. He's not dark or cynical. He does the right thing and is impossibly good. The kind of guy who stops to help save a cat from a tree or help an old lady cross the street. He's just an old-fashioned hero, all because he was raised with the ideals of truth, justice, and the American way by Ma and Pa Kent in Smallville, Kansas. A scene showcasing these values will almost certainly be our introduction to Clark and Superman in this world. He's headed to work, but keeps getting distracted and delayed by his superheroics getting to the Daily Planet late. We can see by the clock on the wall in this shot that Clark doesn't get in until 10:50. Clark's coworker Lois Lane makes note. She's a smart cookie and has likely deduced that there's more Clark than meets the eye. I wouldn't be surprised if she's already figured out that he's Superman. Anyway, Clark doesn't really know a lot about himself or his...
I can't remember if they've said whether or not she knows that he's Superman like already in the movie. Yeah, I don't remember.
origins. He knows his parents found him in a spaceship, and he's discovered the Fortress of Solitude, so he knows he's an alien and maybe a bit about Krypton, but that's about it. But that changes when he discovers an alien supercomputer intelligence. Maybe it's a Kryptonian AI in the Fortress of Solitude. Maybe it's an unrelated probe that crash lands on Earth. Either way, this Brainiac promises Clark knowledge about his past and his people, but Clark either is having trouble getting to that knowledge, or maybe he doesn't like what Brainiac has to say. Either way, he keeps Brainiac in the Fortress of Solitude, along with other relics of his alien heritage, like Crypto the Superdog. But that alien heritage has unknowingly earned Clark a lot of enemies, the biggest of which is Lex Luthor. See, just like what happens in the Superman Birthright comics, Lex is a smart guy, like really smart, enough so that he's never really felt at home on Earth. He's never quite...
3 of your ex-boyfriends died.
That's crazy.
Sure, a few of
Maybe
my
he's just like
exes are dead.
autistic.
quite fit in with his fellow humans, and yet here's this Superman that is clearly something alien, and people love him? No, something's off. And even though they haven't met yet, Luthor does not trust Superman at all. So he wants to find proof that Superman isn't as super as he appears. Using all of his resources, he has probably been able to track Superman's activity up in the Arctic with the Fortress of Solitude, hatching a plan to break in. All he needs is a distraction.
There is a shot in the trailer, I think, or it might have been an image that was released, but there is a shot of like Lex Luthor with like a parka, and he's like in a snowy area, so I assume he's probably discovered the Fortress of Solitude.
Traction. Soon enough, Luthor gets one in what is probably the big action set piece for the film's first act, as a kaiju attacks Metropolis. During this attack, Superman saves many lives, including a little girl that almost gets crushed, and stops the monster from crashing into at least one building. Eventually, Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific show up, and Superman helps them take down the kaiju, but not before some serious damage is done to the city. Superman is also hit by a fireball during this fight, burning his suit. After the fight, the supers regroup at a nearby building.
Oh yeah, that's a good way to connect those two shots.
At this building in a set video, and there are several kids ecstatic to see Superman. Maybe the little girl he saved told her friends about him, but the rest of the crowd isn't as happy. This man in the orange vest approaches Superman and probably tells him that he could have and should have done more. People died. Isn't he supposed to be a hero? The cynical crowd.
It's one of those things with like Captain America Civil War and stories where like people are like, oh, superheroes, rah, it's your fault actually, but it's just like like, how could you possibly think that? Where it's like, he shows up, he does everything that he can to save people and stop the threat. It's like, oh my gosh, he didn't save literally everybody. Wow, you're bad, actually. It's like, I feel like those, like, I understand those stories and like the dramatic effect, but I can never empathize with like the humans that are like hardcore upset or hate like Superman for no reason.
crowd turns on Superman, throwing things at him as he enters the building. The other heroes also come in and talk to Clark, perhaps telling him that this is just the way things are. Saddened, Superman flies away to his fortress of solitude, only to find it robbed. Yeah, Luthor may have caused this kaiju attack himself, or just...
That's interesting. I've seen other people theorize that, like, this scene
the other
here
heroes also come in and talk...
is like the heroes that are upset at Superman, because in the trailer we also see like that kid in like a war-torn country that's like calling for Superman. And I know other people have theorized that one of the reasons why the kaiju caused so much damage was because Superman was off in that other war-torn country helping the people there, and because of that he wasn't able to get here quickly enough to help stop the kaiju. Because they're in this same in this same scene, there's like another scene where you see Guy Gardner's face and he's like, he looks mad. So I don't know, but it's interesting that this is their take on what's going to happen. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we have enough information to definitively say exactly what's going on here.
To Clark, perhaps telling him that this is just the way things are. Saddened, Superman flies away to his fortress of solitude, only to find it robbed. Yeah, Luthor may have caused this kaiju attack himself, or just taken advantage of it, but either way, he uses it as an opportunity to break into the fortress of solitude with his henchman, the Engineer, and Ultraman/Ulysses. We know this thanks to an extra scene put into a version of the trailer only shown in theaters, which sees them walking into the fortress. Here, the group wreck the place and end up stealing Brainiac as proof that Superman is an alien, and Superman arrives too late to stop them, and too late to save some of his beloved Kryptonian robot helpers. We know this has to be right after the kaiju...
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense, because I mean, clearly Lex Luthor does something in the Fortress of Solitude, and like whether he's stealing stuff or just destroying stuff. I mean, no, I think I would agree with film theory here. Like, I don't know, I don't think you would destroy anything in the Fortress of Solitude. You'd probably be just stealing them because you'd want to study it.
kaiju attack because Superman and his suit are still covered in the same burns and soot. Anyway, things are only going to get worse for Clark. Just like in the Superman Birthright comic, Lex is going to use Brainiac to spread information about Superman's Kryptonian origins, framing him as an alien invader. Superman is going to have a bit of an identity crisis over this. But what if he is just an alien scout for an invasion? He no longer has Brainiac to ask about his history, but he can't let that get in the way of him helping people. Despite everything, Superman is still unwaveringly good, doing what he thinks is right, just like we see in the All-Star Superman storyline. This itself will inspire hope in people around the world, just like we see with this kid raising the Superman flag in the teaser. Angered, Lex will escalate things, continuing to frame Superman for increasingly awful things and working with the US government to capture him. This will lead to a battle with Ultraman/Ulysses, and eventually Superman's arrest with Rick Flag Sr. from Creature Commandos. We know that that's going to happen from these set images and scenes from the teaser.
Right.
Now, here's where things get a bit murky. Since most of the teaser footage is from earlier on in the movie, guessing the back half of this plot will be based more on the rules of storytelling and the stories that inspired this film's plot. But we can still get a pretty good idea. Clearly, Superman will be imprisoned in a strange jail for metahumans while Lex starts targeting Superman's close friends and supporters like Lois and the Daily Planet. Lex will also probably begin tinkering with Brainiac to extract as much value out of Superman's alien technology as possible. And this is not going to turn out well for Lex, as he's tricked by Brainiac, who begins to accumulate knowledge and power for himself. At some point, likely driven by the fact that people in his personal life like Lois are in danger, just like we see in the Superman Ending Battle comic, Superman will break out of this prison in a big fight. I'm betting that this is where he gets injured and lands in the snow from the teaser, calling Krypto to take me home. And I bet that home Krypto takes him to isn't what Clark expects. He may think that they're going to the Fortress of Solitude, but instead, Krypto takes him to Lois in Metropolis, his real home. By this point, Lois will have definitely figured out that Clark is Superman, and the two will embrace. Anyway, the third act will almost certainly see Brainiac gaining enough power to betray Luthor and attack Metropolis with the giant energy ball we see throughout the teaser. This is more or less what happens in the Superman Brainiac comic. Cue a big third act battle, Superman realizing that he doesn't need to choose between...
Yeah, interesting. I don't... It's kind of crazy that James Gunn would say that he was influenced by a comic called Superman Brainiac, right? That's what it was called, right?
We'll almost certainly see Brainiac gaining enough power to betray Luthor and attack Metropolis with the giant energy ball we see throughout the teaser. This is more or less what happens in the Superman Brainiac comic.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost... I feel like that's almost confirmation, isn't it?
Cue a big third act battle, Superman realizing that he doesn't need to choose between his Kryptonian heritage and human upbringing, embracing both parts of his legacy and using them to defeat Brainiac. The cynical people of the DCU are inspired by his goodness, while Luthor is furious and forms his next plot to take down what he sees as an alien freak. Roll credits, the end. Alright, so given the minute and a half of footage we have and all of the behind-the-scenes information and interviews, that's how I see the plot of Superman playing out. But more importantly than that, I think all of this information that we've laid out here also gives us a good idea of where Superman's going after this movie. And that means it's time to talk about...
I can't wait for America to see this.
Whoa.
$10,000 every second for 2 minutes.
That's
The
crazy.
countdown begins soon.
Unskippable ad. Not cool. Not cool,
The
YouTube.
Superman sequel. Remember how I said that this hopeful, old-school Superman emerging in a world full of darker, cynical heroes felt like Gunn sort of answering the criticisms of previous DC movies, looking at the gritty take on this universe created by Zack Snyder and deciding to do something completely different on purpose? Well, that might be a bit weird because one of the films being worked on right now is called The Authority. Stick with me, this is important, I promise. See, The Authority was originally a superhero team published by an independent company with the premise of, what if the Justice League were bad? Yeah, this was way before stuff like The Boys made that idea mainstream. And the engineer, one of Lex's henchmen here in this film, is actually a core member of The Authority, which I expect to carry over here in the DCU. Anyway, this team was the epitome of 90s edge. Sure, they were heroes, I guess, but they weren't good. So how are these characters possibly going to fit in with this brighter, more hopeful universe that Superman is spearheading? Well, earlier we talked about how this version of Superman was old-fashioned in a modern world. Specifically, Gunn described him as the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way, a catchphrase commonly associated with Superman. Well, I don't think that wording was something that Gunn just threw out off the cuff. One of the most famous Superman stories is What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. This was later adapted into an animated movie, Superman vs. the Elite. This story is all about Superman coming into conflict with a new group of edgy heroes called the Elite, led by the telekinetic Manchester Black. In addition to being cooler than old-school heroes like Superman, the Elite also thought themselves better because they adapted to what they saw as the modern world. They straight up killed the bad guys because, well, why shouldn't they? And while a lot of the world agrees with the Elite's approach, Superman doesn't, and they
Kill the Joker, Batman. Do it.
inevitably end up fighting. In case the very subtle metaphor isn't landing for you here, this is a story about Superman facing off against representations.
That's good also, you know, because he's... Sorry. This is not going to be worth the joke, but he's also British. And America beat the British. We punched them in the face just like this. So, cool. I don't know. Anyways, that wasn't worth it.
This is a story about Superman facing off against representations of the mature deconstructions of superheroes that became popular in the 90s and doing the exact same thing to them.
How does it feel, Black? How does it feel to be deconstructed?
Superman
Okay, just to be clear, I'm pretty sure that this character is black, okay? Superman is not talking about this guy. I don't think. I
world. They straight up killed the bad guys because, well, why shouldn't they? And while a lot of the world agrees with the Elite's approach, Superman doesn't, and they inevitably end up fighting. In case the very subtle metaphor isn't landing for you here, this is a story about Superman facing off against representations of the mature deconstructions of superheroes that became popular in the 90s and doing the exact same thing to them.
How does it feel, Black? How does it feel to be deconstructed?
Superman vs. the Elite was literally all about Superman punching the idea of characters like Homelander or Omni-Man or the Authority in the face, embracing the hokey, old-fashioned ideas of truth and justice to beat that cynicism, something that becomes all the more clear when you learn that the Elite were created as a direct response by DC to the Authority. This entire concept is just a clapback. It's like Kendrick and Drake. Heck, after DC bought the Authority's publisher and incorporated the team into the DC universe, they put the Elite's leader, Manchester Black, on the Authority to just flat out combine the ideas. Side note, I would bet cold hard cash that Manchester will be on the DCU version of the team, but I digress. All in all, this sort of generational conflict is incredible storytelling. And do you know who else loves those ideas? James Gunn. Seriously, go back and watch through his filmography, both as a director and a screenwriter. Gunn loves to have characters learn to be better than their predecessors like with Star-Lord.
If you kill me, you'll be just like everybody else.
What's so wrong with that?
And also having characters embrace what makes them silly as the thing that actually makes them great. He did it with Polka Dot Man in the Suicide Squad.
I'm a superhero!
With Rocket Raccoon in Guardians of the Galaxy.
What's a raccoon?
Ain't no thing like me except me. Name's Rocket. Rocket Raccoon.
And heck, even Scooby-Doo.
Who do you think you are? Scooby? Dooby? Doo.
Yeah, James Gunn wrote the Scooby-Doo movies, by the way. That's just a fun fact for you. So, Superman...
That's what makes him great, quite frankly. Some might say his finest works.
Versus the Elite, or rather Superman versus the Authority, Superman versus the concept of heroes should be cynical. That is exactly the vibe of sincerity through satire that Gunn really seems to love, and why it's going to be the plot of Superman 2. It would fit with the old-fashioned Superman that he set up here in this universe, with the idea of legacy that the whole DCU franchise is using as a core value, and with the Authority film that's being developed standing out from the entire rest of the slate. It's setting up a natural crossover between these corners of his universe in a way that makes sense and will make the cinematic universe stronger. Man, we really just figured out the plot for 2 movies with like a minute and a half of teaser footage, didn't we? Feeling a bit super myself right now. Anyway, until next time, look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. Nope. It's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory.
Who is the worst Joker?
Okay, yeah, we all know.
Okay. Yeah. You know, like if we're being real, I just don't think that we have enough information to like complete to be like, oh yeah, this theory is definitely right. But I think it's absolutely a fun thing to think about. And well, actually, sorry, to be clear, the fact that he revealed that, or that he mentioned that James Gunn named Superman Brainiac as one of his inspirations, I feel like at least I'm kind of the opinion that I feel like Brainiac kind of has to be in this movie, doesn't it? Like, what? I don't know. I'm like, again, he could be inspired by some other element of that story that isn't all about Brainiac, but that's such a weird thing to just mention. So I don't know. I'm thinking that this guy's right about Brainiac at least being in the movie. As far as like his overall plot synopsis, I mean, I think it's still possible that Lois already knows that he's Superman at the beginning of the movie. Like, that wouldn't surprise me at all. People have other theories about the kaiju scene, so I feel like that might play out differently from how he mentioned, but I don't think that I don't think we have enough evidence to say definitively whether he's right or wrong about a lot of this video, but that's also, it's also just a fun theorizing video, so we don't need to get too, in depth about that. Overall, I like it. I especially like him bringing up the Authority and how at some point it's going to influence the DCU, right? Like, we know that, or like we would assume that at some point the Authority and the regular superheroes, right, like the Justice League, are going to conflict at some point. I guess I initially thought that the Authority would end up being the villains in like a Justice League movie. Because I feel like that just kind of makes sense. I don't know that they would just be the villains in one Superman movie, but the fact that he mentions that, there have been other comic books that are inspiring James Gunn, apparently, right? Like Superman versus the Elite, and that they even made that animated movie adaptation. I guess that does set a precedent. So yeah, that's also another interesting part of this. So overall, good video. I like it. Sorry that I always bring up MatPat whenever I watch these videos now, because they're probably, I assume they're probably trying to form their own identity, and they probably don't appreciate that. So my apologies. Either way, let me know what you think about any and all of this in the comments down below, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.